Elvis was unique. And it was unique because there was so much writing on it. Of all the movies I've made, there's never been quite the experience of Elvis. We had fires, we had floods, and then there was a moment when Tom Hanks was guiding Austin through a crowd, and then someone says he's got the cold thing. That was a pandemic. You may have heard of it. The film shut down. We lost the film. Austin Butler refused to leave. He had been working on 2 years. He kind of willed it back in. I got Tom to come back. We finished the movie. But we're right up against it. You know that Austin actually saw the film for the first time in the Cannes Film Festival. And wow. So when you see that footage of him going like this and that emotion, that's not Austin acting. It was easy because we were in a state of incredible emotion. I think also there was a symbolic moment. Remember this, we'd all been through a pandemic. You know, the film is one of the few non-sequel movies out there that plays, you know, in a larger audience. And I think there was just a feeling. I mean, Cannes was back. Like, people were getting together in dark rooms and loving movies. That was just an awesome feeling. We did a reading just before we got shut down of the screenplay we were going to shoot. I still hadn't solved this kind of traditional beginning. You know, I'd sort of oscillated between a traditional sort of, you meet him, you know, the linear flow. I just remember, like, you've really got to meet Elvis on stage. Because Elvis is the whole package. Like, it's not just the way he sings. It's also the way he moves and the way he dresses. So you've got to meet him there. And so we read that, and it was just basically really top-heavy in the screenplay. Like, it was super top-heavy. And after we got the movie back, I kind of had this epiphany of, I remember reading that Elvis get incredibly nervous, so, to the end of his life, actually. But he would sing gospel. He'd sort of sing gospel backstage to sort of get confidence. And then I thought about the family, and I thought, well, if you sing gospel, does that take us back to, in his mind, memories of gospel? Does that take us to his journey right up to that moment? And does that give him the confidence to finally walk on that stage and stand there? Now, when Austin Butler stands on that stage and says those words, which is the first time we actually see him, it's verbatim what he actually said on the stage. That speech is what he says.
I've heard the recording, yeah.
Yeah, and it's very hard to tell the difference between the two of them. The only other thing I'll say about that sequence is that while it's a very good reproduction, and Austin sings all of that first half of the movie, no auto-tune. In character, he can do anything, because he truly is a character actor. But while we are doing the performance, there's what it was, but there's also what did it feel like for the audience. And I think that's our job as storytellers, is to find a way of translating feeling.
This is a historical figure, and although there are fictionalised scenes, all of the costuming needs to be taken from history and the real vernacular and wardrobe of the person. You needed to, through natural selection, find things that would express that. And so, yes, Elvis's favourite colours were black and pink. He wore lace shirts in this period. In the late 40s and early 50s, he was wearing this Hollywood jacket, a shacket, half shirt, half jacket. And it was about connecting. What Baz kept talking about was this sense of his sensuality and his sexuality, and whatever was happening in the front of his pants being able to be communicated to an audience in a really clear, visceral way, you know, without it being anachronistic. And so it was a big process of discovery. Baz did dress up in a lot of the outfits.
I like dress-ups.
Did you put?
You should have seen me do sateen. It was amazing.
And, you know, it was through that exploration of the movement and him actually feeling what it was like to be in the clothes and doing these workshops together that we actually...
We've done all the time. We had this epiphany moment where, so we got the structural clothing out, and I'd get it, throw it on, and I'm like, it's just not moving right. It's just not moving right. And Sam, this is her kind of brilliance, Sam went like, she's got a pair of scissors because she's an amazing sewer, and she just got it and shredded everything inside of it, just left the shoulder pads. And then I moved, and I went, That's it.
And I work with a fantastic tailor, Gloria Bava, who I've worked with for 30 years. You know, for the last 100 years, basically, men's clothes have been, you know, shirts, pants, waistcoats. It's a pretty narrow, you know, vocabulary. And what's really hard and why you need a brilliant tailor is you need to be able to say things like, okay, so we need it to be like fitted on the back of the butt, so the butt is sexy, but we need it loose at the front. But at the same time, we need it tight enough at the bottom so that when he wiggles, the movement stays in that front part. But he's got to be this sexy leading man, so how many pleats do you have in the front? And where does the pleat go? Because everybody's physicality is different. So I don't know how many pairs of pants. And finally, when we hit on the pant, we dubbed it the squirrel pant.
Squirrel?
The squirrel, yeah.
Well, the squirrel thing is, they used to call him Squirrel at school because he was so odd.
Oh, right.
He was so odd. And he says it later on in lots of tapes. But anyway, Squirrel was like, you know, the weirdo panda, I guess, you know.
Gotcha.
So it is about that combination of a great craftsperson or an artisan that you work with, and then the good luck of finding the right fabric, because fabric is everything, and then also doing enough research to have the ability to say, okay, well, I know that in 1949 he was standing outside Lauderdale Courts wearing a jacket very similar to this.
What Sam talks about there is what Kurosawa would call the immaculate reality, meaning that you can create any world you like, but it's not a free-for-all. And it doesn't matter that the audience don't go like, oh, I get the rules. It matters that you get the rules, and you set the rules. And that forces you to work within your own universal rules, and therefore, as you're building, you can articulate everything you're doing because you sit within a creative world that has rules. So that's a super important thing. The other thing is that Sam mentioned then, she said, imagine scenes, because we're obsessive about research and living it. So everything is actually rooted in some, I can point to anything in that movie and go, no, there's a historical reference. So for example, in that scene, the final line, when Elvis walks on stage, the Colonel says, I cannot overstate how strange he looked. The Colonel didn't say that. You know, we did know the Colonel was there. What did he think? I don't know. But I tell you who did say that. That's a line from Buddy Holly, the first time he saw Elvis on stage. So everything is coming from a historical reference.
A life lived in fear is a life half lived. You've been starting your movies with that in the title design. What is that? What do you want them to take from that message?
You've got to confront fear to grow. I mean, almost everything in life that is negative happens because of fearfulness, the inability to confront fear. So we convert that fear into an irritation, another, the other. The problem is, and it's not easy, like as you get on, you get comfortable, you get rewards. You've got to go to the fear gym and face yourself and face fear so that your muscle for life is being exercised. And I think that's true in life, and it's true in telling the stories of life.